give a landowner's perspective about a topic that obviously everybody in this room feels very passionately about. In the brief time I've been here this afternoon, you know, we were hearing lots of different ideas on what's best. As a landowner, I don't know what that answer is. I wish I did. It sure made it easy for us. A little history about myself, my husband Jim and I live in northeast Iowa, Clayton, Delaware County. We have about 600 acres up there. The Baltimore River runs through our property along with, on one side, along with Bear Creek on the other. Jim and I, besides farming, also operate and own the Edgewood Lockers. So Jim is home very deep in here at this moment. There doesn't need to do anything like well. So we also we have been past chairs of the Iowa Tree Farm Committee, the Northeast Iowa Forestry Advisory Committee, and I also serve on the State Soil Committee. So our roots to conservation are very deep. They're important to us. I'm going to talk a little bit, and then in our spare time, I guess, if there's spare time, we are also the parents of 6 children. So when we look at the land, we see a real investment in not just what we're working with at this time, but we look to the future because of those 6 little ones we have. I'm going to talk about a particular piece of land that we had on the Baltimore River that we have. You can see a picture of it up in front of you. This is what it looked like when we purchased the property back in about 1989, I guess it was. And within 2 years of owning this property, it became very clear to us that we had a severe soil erosion problem. That bank there was about 15 feet deep, and it was slumping at about, I would say we were losing about 15 feet of crop ground a year. It was slumping off about 15 feet. As a matter of fact, we would walk out there. It took us about 2 years to figure it out. We'd walk out there at the end of the crop year, and we would look and see the previous year's crop rows drop into the river. So it was a very devastating problem. In your handouts I gave you, there's a map of that property, and you can see that we had 23 acres of crop ground, and in that 23 acres, this area right here where it's real narrow is where the severe erosion problems were occurring. And it became clear to us in a short period of time we were actually going to lose access to part of that land beyond all the other environmental aspects we were seeing. So we did what many landowners do. We stopped up at our NRCS office to develop a conservation plan to see what we could do with that property. And they came out to our land and they looked at it and they said, yep, we can help you. Now, mind you, at the time this was occurring, we were maybe 30 years old. We were young, we had just bought this land, so money was tight. And they said, we can help you. We've got 50% cost share to help stabilize that bank. We said, oh, okay, this sounds really good. And so they came up with their plan, which was full bank riprap, and I know you've been hearing a lot about riprap from the sounds of it. And the cost was going to be $86,000, and they were going to cost share 50% of it with us. Well, as a young couple, that was completely not feasible for us, obviously. So we were like, oh, what do we do, what do we do? It was making us sick to see this, and it just so happened to be very timely that at the time this was all occurring, there was an article in the Iowa Conservationist about some work that Dick Schultz and Tom Eisenhart from Iowa State were doing on the Little Bear River, or I can't remember exactly what it's called, down just north of Ames. And so we had taken a trip down to see that, and it was using willow post trees to stabilize banks. Well, as tree farmers, that caught our attention immediately, and then planting a stream bank repairing really caught our attention. So we went back to our NRCS office and said, is this an option for us? And they said, oh, no, we only cost share riprap. We don't cost share trees or any of that. And that was the rules at that time, which unfortunately this project has since changed that. So for a moment I want to pause here and give a shout out to how important as landowners it is the interaction that they receive when they first walk into that NRCS, FSA office, whether it's the state secretaries that wait on them, whether it's the soil technicians, somebody over at FSA. There's people that want to make things happen, or people that just go, no, that's it. We are really, really lucky because Clayton County was amazing. So when we went in there, they said, no, grant, but one of the soil technicians there said, wow, this is a sick problem. Let me just do some thinking around here. So he started looking around, pulling strings, and he actually found a grant through Washington State to do an experimental project on this stream using the willow post and a stream bank riparian. At that time, the only one that had been done was on Bear Creek. There was nothing done on a large stream like the Volga River. The Volga River is a fast-moving stream. It goes up very quickly, or it's called a river, up very quickly and down very quickly. So we were all over it. We invested our labor and part of our funds to do the project, to get it done. So I'll show you just a little bit here. There's just some more of the soil erosion. Sandbank erosion you can see occurring. And you know, every drop of water is ending up in those streams, whether it's on our property or somebody else's. It's all shooting down there eventually, and it has to do with water quality. So we did do exactly what Wayne was talking about. We sloped the bank back because if we were to throw those willow posts in there, you were going to see a picture in the end result, just like he showed you, of a tree slumping into the river eventually. The one thing I think that we learned is that the river is going to move. It's going to move back and forth, bluff to bluff. It does it over time, but it does it slowly. Ours was accelerated at an extremely fast rate, so that's what we were trying to do. We know we'll never stop that river from moving back and forth between those bluffs. We just want to get it to go back to a natural time frame. So eventually, yeah, you will see some of those trees in those riverbanks. But I do believe that the roots of those trees really are tremendous in slowing down what's happening there. And the willows are really special to stopping stream erosion because of their deep root system. So this is actually my husband. Where's my hair over here? There it is. Here's Jim and myself. And we had this track hoe come in. It had a borer on the end of it. It would bore down holes, and we picked up, there were 300 of these willow posts, one by one. We'd shove them into the ground as it would put them in. And then we had 4-foot posts, and I think we had 1,500 of those that we pounded in by hand. So it was very labor intensive, and we worked our butts off, but we were in our 30s, we could do it. It wasn't undoable. And then once we had all of that done, actually myself and another guy came out because we were also building our new lottery plant at the same time, so our timing was horrible on this. But we came out, and where you see, where you see these big, large willow posts down along the river here, we took and cut cedars. We had about 150 cedar trees that we tied in. We laid them down flat and we tied them in between the rows of cedars. And they acted as another form to slow down that current as it came through. And it was really cool. And at the time, I'm telling you, that was the most painful job I've ever done in my life. But it worked. A year later, we went back, and those cedar trees were cemented in with silt. So it was doing exactly what it needed to do. So here we go. And then this is just a picture of our tree planting here. You can see the rows. We did, I believe, 5 rows of trees along the riverbank, followed by then the rest of the crop ground was planted into prairie grasses. And we built some shallow water holding areas into that because inevitably this river was going to flood, and when it did, we wanted to have a place for the water to stay standing to hold it back a little bit. It's worked beautifully. We've had 4 500-year floods on this property since we did this project, and it's just held up amazingly. There you can see this was shortly after everything was planted. You can just start to see just a little bit of growth on those willows there. And then there we are a year later, the following spring. And there we are, that's probably about 3 years out. And you can see that's a totally different looking stream bank now. It's really doing its job. And that's my favorite picture right there. So the project held really well. It did what it was supposed to do. I guess from a landowner's perspective, what I would have to say would be the fact that most of our rivers and streams ultimately run through a farmer's property. And those are the people that we really need to be working with. They can be difficult to work with, I think, at times, or difficult to reach. But some of it is education. You know, they don't know where to go for help, or you run into roadblocks when you look for help. We were probably really fortunate because we were just kind of ornery and stubborn in that way, and we kept going until we found something to help us out. But this project stimulated a lot of attention. It did change some legislation to allow funding, and it recognized that stream bank riparians were a really vital source to helping with the river systems. It also has been used tremendously for education purposes. In the handouts I gave you, you can see some pictures of school kids down there working in that stream. We now have a high school course that takes place out on our property every day for 9 weeks in the fall. And those students measure the velocities and depths of that stream, how it's moving. They also do water sampling and check for the animals in the river as to what they're finding. They consistently found that that stream has continued to improve in water quality, and that's after floods. A lot of the property, that 23 acres, will never be crop ground again. It never should have been crop ground to begin with. And it's got a lot of sand sitting on top of it now. I mean, those 500 floods that have come through. I know one time we walked down there, and I think the river was like 16 feet over the bank. So I'm not even 5 foot, so it was 3 and a little bit more of me that was standing out there in that water. So it was pretty impressive to see. But it's been a good experience for us, and